All right, welcome. So this video is the actual instant fix to overstimulation. This video is going to cover the reality of beating overstimulation. I'll give you the true overnight fix to this problem. Anybody who has truly beaten their overstimulation and dopamine addictions will tell you that it's not going to be an overnight fix, but rather a long, drawn-out process that requires patience and commitment to the journey. However, the instant fix is a momentary decision to commit to the path, which that can happen overnight. That can happen like that. But to follow through on this, we need to change our habits and mindsets permanently. This part will take time, and it does take time, but it is definitely worth it. And so this video is going to teach you guys exactly how to actually make that decision for yourself, actually commit yourself to that path, but then how can you follow through on this commitment, right? The instant fix is the commitment. The moment you've committed to changing your trajectory, you can get better, you can heal, you can progress. And so that is the only way to fix it instantly, really, is to make a commitment and stick to that commitment. If you taper off, you will suffer longer. It'll take longer. You'll go through more pain before you actually get to the solution. Versus if you are able to make a decision to completely and utterly cut out anything that is distracting you or taking you off your path and commit to changing your habits, changing your mindset, and permanently making a change to your identity, the process will go much easier. It'll go much smoother, right? So before we get into the actual video, anyone who is serious on their self-improvement and needs better, more quality education on how to do so, I'm creating a community called the Academy of Self-Mastery, in which I will have in-depth, in-detail courses on all of the topics regarding self-improvement and self-development, including how to achieve your goals, habits, routine mastery, dopamine detoxing, mental health, fitness, sexual transmutation, diet, and much, much more. If that's something you guys are interested in, you can go down to my description and click the first link, which will take you to my Instagram, and just send me a quick DM. I'm currently running a early access for the program, so if you DM me on Instagram now, you will get in at a lowered price than the initial price that I'm going to launch it at. So you'll get a discounted price, and while the course is still in development, while the project is still in development, I have some of the courses prepared and ready to go. So if you would like access to some of those courses, requesting early access, you will get links to watch the courses for free. And then once the program actually goes live, those who bought in or those who requested the early access for the program will be the first to get the links to buy into the program. And you'll have the opportunity to get in before it actually goes public. And when it goes public, obviously the price will go back to its initial price that I'm going to launch at. So if you want a discounted price for that and you want early access to the courses themselves, go ahead and click that first link in the description. Go ahead and send me a DM. But other than that, I'm going to get into the actual instant fix to overstimulation. So when I was younger, I was addicted to social media. I was addicted to weed. I was addicted to junk food. And beating these wasn't an easy process whatsoever. It took a lot of dedication and effort. However, I've learned what it takes to break off these addictions and create a new set of habits and a new identity. I was able to beat my addiction to TikTok virtually overnight, while I struggled for months and years with some other addictions. But what I've learned is that the process is the same no matter how bad the addiction is. To overcome the overstimulation cycle, you simply need to break the bad habit. Allow yourself to reintegrate into life without the external source of stimulation, right? Reintegrating essentially means allowing yourself to actually live in reality. Bring your consciousness to a state of being in reality. Bring your mind into reality. Be mindful instead of being mindless and being lost in this cloud or this imaginary world of dopamine addiction, right? Reintegrating yourself back into life without the external source of stimulation, right? So you don't need to be stimulated all the time to be able to live life like a normal human being, right? In fact, a normal human being, we originally never had technology like this. In reality, we don't even need any forms of stimulation, because reality itself and just living in reality, doing things naturally, already provides that kind of stimulation anyways. It's just we've become so desensitized to it we don't realize, right? And so the goal is to replace it with some form of creation rather than an alternative source of stimulation, right? So learn to create something out of the same energy you would just waste on mindlessly scrolling. This video will go over exactly how you can do this and start to actually heal your brain from the overstimulation cycle. I will also give you tactics to make this healing process much easier and more effective. So for the first section, how to instantly heal from overstimulation. When we become stuck in overstimulation, we build up an excess of energy and information greater than what we can naturally process. And so this is where journaling comes in. It allows an outlet for this excess of information and this excess of energy, while also helping us to gain clarity on our situation, both of which can be very, very helpful in gaining a level of mindfulness and regaining good overall mental health, right? Restabilizing the mental health, right? Because we're very clouded when we're stuck in overstimulation. You're very fogged up because there's so much crowding in the mind. There's so much information stuck in the mind that can't move. There's too much of it. There's too much different types of information conflicting with each other. And so by journaling and journaling deeply and going really, really deep into it, we can gain a level of mindfulness again, and we can gain a level of clarity, and we can regain our mental health through this because we're processing all that information down to the point that it's concise, it's understandable, and so we no longer have these conflicting thoughts in our mind, or we no longer have an overabundance of information in our brains. Clarity of mind is vital in the coming steps. It will give you the ability to stay aware and conscious through the cravings you will inevitably face. So this is why I started with journaling, because you want to have this clarity of mind in order to continue and follow through. And so before you've even fully made the decision, you can use this step, right? Before you've even fully committed to the path, you can utilize this step, and it will give you enough clarity of mind. It will increase your mental health. It will give you the mindfulness, right, that you need to be able to push through and follow through on fighting the cravings and sticking to this new path, right? And it can also help you to clarify your decision, right? You're making this decision because of something else, not just for the hell of it, right? And so that why will give you an idea of what direction to move in when you're feeling lost, when you're feeling stuck, when you want to revert or relapse, right? So the next thing is hard/purposeful work. So working hard, but specifically on something that is purpose-driven, right? By engaging in difficult work, you are essentially forcing your brain to remove junk and distractions and concentrate on the task. If sustained, this state of focus will result in a flow state, bringing you back to a state of full presence, right? To get you out of your mind, get you out of this loop of thinking, bring you back to a present state. It forces you to also reduce any distractions, reduce any, or completely remove any crowding in the mind or any distractions that may come up or any ideas that may be pulling you in other directions, and forces you to concentrate your energy and your attention on the task. Therefore, you're able to become more mindful, you're able to regain clarity, and you're able to process some of this information out and use it as an outlet for some of this information as well. So it is also a means of processing the overstimulation of the mind and excess of information. As I just said, it becomes a tool that we can use to process this information. You think of my YouTube, right? I got out of my overstimulation cycle by creating content on both how to do it, but also just creating content on all of the shit that I was learning that kind of became overwhelming at a certain point. This overwhelming feeling was just because I was bombarding my brain with information, but I wasn't processing or applying enough of it to be able to have this clean flow. It got stuck in ideas and thoughts. And so work, specifically the type of work I'm doing, creating content out of the information, but essentially you can process it into an action plan that you can then follow through on from there, right? And that allows you to utilize the information, which gets it out of your mind, out of your head, and therefore you can clear it from the mind and heal and become present and become stable again. And so to make it more effective, just pick one task and completely fixate on or focus on it, right? Just that task alone, nothing else. This will force your brain to begin engaging in effort instead of continuing to drift from one stimulus to the next. However, task switching will break this focus. So that's why you don't want to task switch. That's why you want to pick one and but get into the state of focus, which takes work, right? You're going to need to stay concentrated on the one task to get into and ease into the state of focus, right? Focus increases the longer you sustain it, right? Or the intensity of your focus increases the longer you sustain it, right? So just make sure that you complete each task in full before switching tasks. That's all. So once you start a task, plan to complete that task, right? Or work until the point where you're done working on that task and move on, but come back to that task next. Don't, let's say it's just like my work stuff with my business, not like, work stuff and then skip my chores so that the next thing I do is work. But when it comes to work tasks specifically and developing your business, if I have a big script to write, like let's say for my courses, I have like really long scripts I'm writing. So that takes a lot of time and effort. But just as I would apply this to a video that I can get done in one block, I would apply it the same there. So if I have one block where I'm working on that task, my next block is still also working on that task. And I go until I am complete with it before I move on to a different task. Because then what happens is, and I've experienced this as well, is I have multiple projects open at once and half completed, but my mental energy isn't like really in any of them, right? Whereas when I'm focused on the task and I'm working through it and I'm just focused on that task for a period of time, 100% of my mental energy is on that task. And so I can work to the best of my ability, produce the most and the fastest, but also produce the best results. Versus if I have a bunch of tasks or a bunch of projects I'm thinking about at once, and that way I'm scatterbrained. My mind is scattered, my energy is scattered. So you want to focus your energy. And the reason this is important is because when you're in overstimulation, think about what it's doing. When you're scrolling, when you're just watching a lot of content and taking in a lot of information, you start to become a little bit scatterbrained. Your mind is thinking about 1,000 different topics at once. And so to refocus and refixate onto just one thing at a time will force your brain to start to actually rewire itself back to the original state, which was this state of focus, this one-pointed attention span, right? Not this scattered attention span that we've developed because of the overstimulation. By doing this consistently, you will start to program your brain to derive dopamine from effort and seek the heightened state of intense focus and flow over mindless drifting from pleasure to pleasure. So I find this to be true with my YouTube channel. The more focus I put into each video that I make and the more attention I give to the moment when I'm making these videos and the intensity of my focus, the more addicting it becomes, right? This making content has started to become the most stimulating part of my day, right? I find myself, if I do end up like on YouTube or scrolling, I get bored really, really quick. Like nothing kind of hits the same as just making my own videos. And that's what you want to work towards, is you want to work towards essentially programming and training your brain to crave the actual work and the effort instead of craving pleasure and stimulus, right? Because stimulation and pleasure is just like a fleeting feeling. And if that's what your body is craving, you're going to be craving something that you can never actually fully attain. Whereas if you crave effort, right? Effort is our natural state as human beings, right? That's why most people hate their lives, is because they're in this constant state of effort, right? They're constantly fighting back and forth with themselves. They want to be one way, but they feel they need to be another way. Or they're addicted to one thing, but they want to change their situation, right? And so there's this constant conflict, and that's constant effort, right? But because they're in this state of wanting pleasure and ease, it feels like pain and discomfort. But if you can learn to derive dopamine from this effort, you can essentially stay in this state, but you can also apply effort to the right things so that you can progress to where you want to go, right? Because those who don't derive dopamine from effort can't actually apply effort themselves. It's just that since effort is a constant part of life, like we're constantly being conflicted with things. We constantly need to put in effort for things, even if it's mental effort, as small amounts of effort, right? Like thinking takes effort because it takes mental effort. So everything requires a small portion of effort, not even a small portion, but a type of effort, right? Everything requires some form of effort. And so for these people, it's very, very difficult to direct their attention and direct their efforts towards something specific, because everything just sucks and effort just sucks and they just want the pleasure and the ease. But again, that's only a fleeting moment, right? Everything around that moment of pleasure that you get from smoking weed or scrolling on TikTok, everything around it is still effort. And it's more painful now because you're deriving your dopamine from the pleasure instead of reprogramming your brain to be sensitive to dopamine so that it can derive it from work and effort instead, which is the natural process of the dopamine system. It will also benefit you in the healing process as it will allow you to decompress the mind and release all of the built-up tension that collects within these overstimulation cycles, right? So it essentially allows you to decompress, right? And you kind of release the tension that's building while you're scrolling and you're in this cycle, in this loop, right? So the next thing I have is recentering and bringing yourself back to the present moment. If you find yourself drifting, stuck in your mind, or trapped scrolling, just bring yourself back to the present moment. So when you find yourself in this loop of scrolling, right, all you have to do is recenter yourself. You have to just bring yourself back to the present moment, right? So turn off the phone. If you have to throw it across your room, don't break your phone, please. But if you have to throw it across your room, do it, right? Do whatever you have to do to just get it away from you and like bring yourself back to the present moment. And you're going to feel like shit. It's going to feel painful. It's going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to be like, oh, I want the stimulation. I want the stimulation. And like, you're going to feel off, right? You're not going to be able to like put two and two together and realize that you're just irritated because you want the stimulation, but you'll feel off. You'll feel irritated. You'll feel uncomfortable. And literally just sit with that for a little bit. If you sit with that for long enough, you will realize why it's happening. You will realize why you feel so uncomfortable. And most of the time, it's because you're sedentary. When we are sedentary as human beings, we aren't comfortable in this state. And so that's why we need stimulation, like from scrolling on TikTok, right? If we're going to go and like, go unconscious and just brain rot on the couch, well, we might as well have something stimulating our brain while we're just rotting away, right? If we're gonna sit in the state of sedation, we need some form of stimulation to be okay with that, right? And so this may be really hard right now, and it may seem pointless because you think it's just, it's so difficult to live through this state. There's no point in it. Like, there's got to be some other fix to like make it so I can just move on. But by going through with this, that is the process of healing and moving on, right? You need to experience this pain and discomfort in order to heal. So this might be hard and it may seem pointless, but it is a profound way to decompress and relieve the brain fog, right? Giving you a sense of clarity moving forward, right? So it may be hard right now, it may be difficult, but just remember, when you become present, when you become grounded in reality, when you actually finally get out of your head, you will be able to decompress and relieve the brain of all of its stress and tension, and that is a lot of what causes our brain fog in the first place. It is also a really effective way of deprogramming the need for escape from the present moment, right? Because the reason you're stuck in overstimulation is because you're constantly feeling a need to escape the present and stimulate yourself with something distracting, right? And so if you sustain this state of presence, if you get grounded in a state of awareness, in a state of presence, and you're out of your head and you're just breathing and just like in your body and feeling what that feels like, feeling the emotions or feeling the tension, right? If you can sustain this, you will begin to derive more joy from focus and presence than from mindlessness and instant gratification. So you'll prefer to be mindful than mindless and constantly chasing instant gratification and stimulation, right? By bringing your attention back to this moment, you are effectively breaking the mind's cycle, at least for a moment, right? So you bring your attention back to the present, and just for that moment, you will break the cycle within the mind. Yes, it will kick back on at a certain point, right? The brain isn't just going to, oh, shoot, we broke that loop, let me just forget it, right? It is going to pull you back into it at a certain point. It is going to try to pull you back into the mind within probably seconds for most of you. But if you just learn to do this more consistently, constantly break that cycle and get good at it, you can eventually permanently break it by breaking it repeatedly enough that the brain finally adapts to the new cycle you're creating, right? As well as, just by breaking the mind cycle for a moment, you get a level of clarity and awareness again, and that will allow you to make a decision. And you will either make the decision to go back, or you will make the decision to make a change, right? And if you choose option number 2 and you make a change and you take an action, you will likely take one action and then return right back to where you were. But that is progress in the right direction. And so now it's a matter of realizing when you fall, realizing when you get lost in the sauce, right? Realizing when you get distracted by scrolling, and bringing your attention back to the present moment by turn your phone off and move it, get it away from you, so that you're forced to be in this present moment for a second. And then by forcing yourself to do it, you break that cycle that I was talking about. And then you have this momentary decision you can make, right? And by using this opportunity to make the right decision consciously, you are taking a step in a new direction, right? This moment is a point in which you can choose between continuing on your path or choosing a new route. As I just said, you get 2 choices. You can either change and take an action in the right direction, or you can just return right back to your old path, right? Whereas when you are consumed by your vices, it's hard to break free. You can't make a different decision for your life when you're stuck in the vice itself. When you take a second to recenter yourself and focus on the present moment, you can now observe and dictate which choice is the best one moving forward. And the next thing that I have, the next section, is fucking quit. Get off your phone, stop using it, get off the video games, delete them, get rid of them, sell the fucking Xbox, right? Throw out the weed, throw out the junk food, and delete, any apps that are distracting you on your phone. Stop watching the porn. You actually have to be willing to go through with the suffering if you want to make a permanent change. If you don't go through with the suffering and you just kind of dance around the point and just kind of look for all these tips and tactics and tricks that'll make it easier to do it, but never actually do it, first of all, none of the tips and tricks and tactics will ever do anything for you. But also, the only way to actually make the change is to do it, and then usually while you're doing it, you learn some tips and tactics and tricks that make it easier. And that's where all these YouTubers who are coming up with them and telling them to you got them from, is they did the thing first, they learned how to do the thing, and then they got so good at the thing that they learned some ways to make it easier, and now they're telling you how you can make it easier, but you'll only ever be able to implement and use that when you start doing the thing, right? And in this case, doing the thing is quitting the thing and then following through on not doing the thing, right? Not going on your phone when you're bored, not smoking weed when you're bored or tired or want a break, right? Not playing video games at the end of a hard work day, right? Eating real food instead of junk food when you're hungry. All of these things, you just need to allow yourself to go without them long enough to reprogram your brain, reprogram your identity to align with something else. The only real key to habit change is to actually stop doing the ones that you want to break and start doing the ones that you want to build and reinforce. It is really, truly that simple. Habits are a matter of repetition, and that is it, right? If you want to start a new habit, all you have to do is do it today and then find a time tomorrow to do it, and then plan to do it the day after, and then plan to continue that forever, right? Plan to never end that, plan to never stop that, plan to always just 1 rep a day, at least 1 rep every single day. And the same thing with the bad habits. It is we want 0 repetitions every single day. We want no repetitions towards this habit. And it's that simple. It really is that simple. If you just break it down to its repetitions per activity, it's very simple. Habit change is very easy, right? You will suffer when your brain is still in the state of seeing the addiction as a habit. But by just repeatedly saying no to that habit, your brain will over time forget it and rewire itself to optimize for a new habit, a new set of behaviors. So you won't find some magic trick that allows you to break your addictions and create new habits or make 100K a month or become a great athlete, right? Those things are earned and developed through action. Consistent, focused, and intentional action. So instead of trying to figure it all out before you start so you can figure it all out. You need to start, and to do that in the context of this video means actually stopping what you're doing, right? It's the opposite. You don't need to do the thing and have a repetition doing it. You need to have repetitions not doing the thing, right? You need to have days where you have 0 repetitions towards that thing. And that is how you break these habits, is by actually not doing them and going through the suffering that is associated with that. By starting that journey, you've now taken the first step and actually opened yourself up to implementing all of the things you've learned in this video, right? So by actually taking the step to remove it, you now have the opportunity, the ability to implement everything else that I'm teaching you and some of the things that I'm about to teach you. But without taking that first step, you cannot actually progress, even though you are learning. So I'm going to explain to you why overstimulation seems so hard to overcome. So, first point is the dopamine deficit. The main struggle you will face with removing and healing your brain from overstimulation is that you've now created a dopamine deficit. Or more accurately, you are now desensitized to normal amounts of dopamine, and so cannot feel a normal level of enjoyment in the real world. You have become used to the stimulus of your drug or social media, and now that you have removed those things, you are left in what I call the dopamine deficit. Essentially, your brain cannot naturally produce enough dopamine to stimulate your dopamine receptors. That is what the dopamine deficit is. But truly, it's not a deficit. Truly, it's that your receptors are desensitized to the amount of dopamine that can be released naturally, and so you only get that stimulation from the addictions now. And we're trying to reverse that. In this state, it becomes much harder for you to enjoy normal activities with the same level of stimulation and engagement. You will have to allow yourself time to reestablish a normal baseline of dopamine, which unfortunately can only happen through embracing the pain or boredom you face long enough to reset your baseline for dopamine. However, there are some ways to speed up the process, like meditation. But the reason it works is that you are directly taking on this discomfort, meaning experiencing more pain in the moment, to shorten the time needed to reset your baseline. But the main thing to remember is that you will only really crave your addiction during this time, as it is the only stimulus great enough to give you some pleasure, right? You won't really feel much pleasure from anything else during this period because you're still recovering, right? You're still resensitizing your dopamine receptors to natural levels of dopamine. And until you've healed, that is. Once you have healed, you will become resensitized. You will start to feel stimulated by normal activities again. And so you don't have to worry about this long term, but for the moment, you have to understand that you will crave the addiction, and you have to tell yourself no, and you have to keep telling yourself no until you actually make it through, until you've actually healed. And then you won't really think about it much anymore, and you won't need to constantly tell yourself no, and you'll just be able to focus on what you actually want to be doing. Because that is the whole reason you're quitting, is because there's something that you would rather be doing instead, or there's something you want to achieve that will require you to do something else instead. But doing so will send you further down into the rabbit hole / dopamine deficit. Meaning, if you give into that addiction, if you give into that craving, during that stage, you will just go further down the rabbit hole. You will return back into a full dopamine deficit, and you will actually start to worsen it. And this is the very reason you've been addicted this long in the first place is because every time you do try to break free, you feel all the cravings and you're just like, fuck that, and you revert right back. And you just dig yourself deeper into the hole as you do that. So next thing is you become stagnant, meaning it's harder to get up and get to work on something more difficult than the easy dopamine and overstimulation. So because you become stagnant, you want the easy thing because it requires more to give an effort than if you weren't, all right? So when you're addicted to your vice, it typically allows you to get stimulation with little effort, right? Social media requires absolutely no effort, right? Moving your thumb up and down does not require any effort whatsoever, meaning you become lazy due to the ease of its use, right? You get the most stimulation of your entire life by flicking your thumb. So why in the world would you go and with full attention, with full focus, full effort, type out an entire essay when you could just get more stimulation by flicking your thumb, right? At least as far as the brain is concerned, why would you do that? But obviously if we're smart and intelligent, we understand that, well, the thing that requires more effort is going to be more rewarding in the end, but the brain is focused on momentary pleasure because it's programmed for instant gratification at the moment. You need to reprogram it for delayed gratification. What happens over time is you begin to get stagnant due to the lack of effort, and you find yourself no longer desiring to do the things that used to be rewarding but take effort, right? So let's say you had a sport you really liked when you were younger, but it requires effort to play that sport. So you may lose the same interest. You may not have the same interest. You may not have the same desire or passion for it as you get into your dopamine addiction, as you get into this overstimulation cycle, because you desensitize yourself to the amount of dopamine that it would provide. And so the effort that it takes is no longer worth it to you. This stagnancy makes it harder to recover, as movement and activity within normal healthy habits is the best and fastest way to heal, right? So getting movement, being active is actually the best way to heal, right? So, but the stagnancy means it will require much more effort / energy to get things into motion, right? You are in a place where you are still. If you take a car from 0 to 60, it'll take much longer than if you take a car from 60 to 120, right? Because the car's already in motion at 60, whereas it's completely stopped at 0, right? So this extra effort that it requires combined with the dopamine deficit, and you will have a real problem, as you need to get enough dopamine flowing to be motivated enough to initiate action, but you need the action to heal from your dopamine deficit, right? And so the solution is you need to push through. You literally just need to push through the resistance. You need to push through the pain. You need to force yourself into motion, force yourself into action. The solution is you need to push through no matter how hard the resistance, and just begin taking action on the things that will have a positive result. So simply getting up out of bed, like getting out of the couch or off the couch and getting out of bed, like these are basic things that might take a good amount of effort, right? So if you just do those things first, that'll get the ball rolling. And then what's the next thing you could do? Go grab a glass of water if you've been scrolling for the last 3 hours, right? And then you kind of can progress yourself into more and more intense levels of action. But if you just take action, just get yourself moving and get yourself moving towards a positive result, you'll be able to get the ball rolling, and from there you can carry it on even further, right? So I like to recommend the gym, as no matter who you are, some time spent in the gym will give you the space to reflect and recenter, while also getting in some exercise, which will have countless benefits on your brain, helping to heal your brain, so long as you aren't one of those people who sit on TikTok between sets at the gym. If you sit on TikTok while you're at the gym, you're a clown. No, I'm playing, but that is clown shit. If you're sitting on TikTok between sets, obviously you're not going to get the benefit you're looking for if you're trying to heal from overstimulation. So you have to learn how to work out without stimulation, right? Everybody seems like they need music in the gym to work out. That's bullshit. If you can't work out without music, if you can't work out without stimulation in between sets, that's what you need to work on, right? Essentially, use the gym as a space and a time for you to focus on you and working on your body, and just processing things that are going on in your mind, right? And that's what I'm sitting here saying, is basically use it as a space to reflect, recenter, and just kind of focus on the workout itself and just be present in between sets. And this will help you to heal from this overstimulation problem, because that presence in between sets, presence within the set, presence within the effort of the set, this will all help to tie everything together that I've been talking about in this entire video. So the next thing that I have is it has wired your brain for instant gratification. So this long-term use of social media has wired your brain for overstimulation and instant gratification. The last reason it's so hard is that your brain is now wired for instant gratification, which means that it is seeking that kind of pleasure, and not the kind that comes from hard work or exercise. The issue with this is that your brain is going to try and trick you into thinking it needs pleasure, when in reality, it just needs that fix because it's still addicted to the dopamine. And so you will feel real pleasure and satisfaction from the normal activities when you have a healthy brain. But for the overstimulated mind, it feels like pain and discomfort. And if you're not careful, this can create a new craving for the old stimulus. The solution here is to just push through and understand that your brain will seek the old stimulus, but that is due to its addiction and not because it is the real solution, not because it is really what will solve your problem. It is not what will really satisfy you. So now we are going to go over my protocol for overstimulation. So if I ended up getting back into overstimulation, right? If I ended up falling down the rabbit hole again, what would I actually do to get out? The first thing I would say is get up from your chair. Put the phone down. Stop watching it. Like, you have to literally, if you have to turn it off, right? If you press the button, basically you need to instantly cut off the stream of dopamine, right? That's the hardest part, is you have to cut off the stream of dopamine, right? So get up from your chair, turn everything off, turn off the Xbox. If it's weed, just like throw it out, throw it away, get it away from you. Dump your drink, like literally throw it out, like waste the shit, and then move, get moving, right? And the first step to beating overstimulation is just to move, right? Put everything aside, and just get moving, right? Go for a walk, just go outside in general, go to the gym like I said before. But the basic principle is just drop the thing and move to somewhere else, to another thing, right? Relocate your actually move your body, relocate, right? From here, you can find your next step. But you will never progress if you don't start by dropping the addiction. You will never find the thing that will get you out of this state while you're in the state, right? So you have to break the cycle, break the loop, and then separate yourself from it so that you can then make a new conscious decision. Next thing is to take a moment to reset, breathe, recenter, and focus on the present moment, right? Use this time to breathe and recenter your mind. So we just got moving, we moved to a different location, we got off we ended the stream of dopamine, right? Now, use this time to breathe, recenter yourself, recenter into your mind, become mindful again. And you might feel some brain fog, you might feel some discomfort. Just embrace this and allow your body and mind to relax. Reflect on why you were so deep into this addiction, and also why you decided to try and break it. This will help to give you clarity on where you're at right now and where you're trying to go from where you're at, right? Because you may feel like you're in a little bit of a confusion state, right? You can even take a cold shower to shock your body and brain, clearing some of this brain fog and resetting some of your dopamine, which actually, this is one instant fix for overstimulation. If you get in the cold shower, you will get out and you'll feel amazing. My girlfriend used to have anxiety, and she took a cold shower with me the other day, and she said that, she sometimes wakes up anxious still, and that was one of the mornings she just randomly woke up really anxious, right? We took the shower, we got out, and she looked at me and she's like, it's all gone. I don't feel any of the anxiety at all. It's all gone. And so the same thing goes for the brain fog with overstimulation. And it's just because the cold showers kind of help your nervous system to get energy moving. And that regulates your nervous system because it clears out any excess energy. And so with the brain fog issue and dopamine, it increases dopamine to cold shower. But just talking about the brain fog issue, it'll help you to clear some of that brain fog and just feel a little bit more stable and grounded. The next thing I have is clean your room. And you're going to roll your eyes at me and you're going to be like, well, that's fucking stupid. But genuinely start cleaning your room. Work on cleaning your space up and maybe start to remove certain things that were associated with the old life path and start to move things around and build them out to associate with the new life path, right? I always say clean your room for many, many different reasons. One is just that it is a simple enough activity for most to do. Most of you guys stuck in that scrolling addiction may think that you're above cleaning your room, for example, but the thing is, it's probably the best you can do right now, right? And so just start with that. Just start with cleaning your room and therefore you're doing something that's productive, but it's something that's easy enough for you to actually get done, right? And the second reason is that you are cleaning your space, taking care of yourself, taking care of your clutter, which is reflected in your mind, right? So that is literally a process for you to start breaking down and start analyzing and maybe start to interpret and process some of that information in your brain just because you're physically organizing yourself in your space, right? Oftentimes, cleaning my room leads to deep reflection, which results in me clearing my mind as well, right? So because I'm reflecting on, all the contents of my mind, all the information I picked up, it also gives me a level of clarity and it allows me to clear some of these thoughts from my mind and start to empty that burden, right? Clear that weight. The next step that I have is to sit down with a book and or a journal, right? So now sit down with a book to read or a journal to write. This is your new activity when you are bored at home and you desire to turn to your old vices. I will say that again. This is your new activity when you are bored and you desire to turn back to your vices. As you pull out a journal or you pull out a book or you pull out both and you start working on those. And you start either reading the book or you start writing in the journal, or maybe you read the book and then you write some of the thoughts you're having into the journal. This is your new activity. This is the thing that you do instead of scrolling, period. And if you maintain this, I promise you, you will be able to break out of this cycle and you will be able to move closer to your desired life path. If you're on the self-improvement path, you will be able to move towards achieving your goals. You've been so stuck for so long because you've been overstimulated, you've been distracted, but you can start to move in that direction if you just make this your default habit. Journaling will help you with the reflection and processing the excess information in the mind, as well as to set intentions for what to do next, right? And reading is going to be a healthy alternative to scrolling as it is slower but contains more information, meaning it is able to be fully processed as you read, unlike scrolling, where it is too fast and too much information for the brain to keep up with. From here, focus on where you actually want to go, then begin working to get there. So now the biggest step and the only way to ensure you won't go back to overstimulation, and that is to set a goal. Sit down and really, really reflect on where it is you want to go in life. And take some time with this, right? Because once you've decided, I want you to dedicate everything to getting there, right? Align your life totally with whatever true goals you have, as this level of obsession is what we really crave, right? This is why we want this dopamine addiction, this constant stream of stimulation, is because we have this thing we want to go after, and we have this thing we want to align our lives towards and put our effort towards and become and achieve, but we don't do it, and we want to distract ourselves, and it's kind of uncomfortable, and so we don't do it. And we distract ourselves instead. But now, if you want to remove the stimulation, the only way to actually do it and make it sustainable is to go and do the thing that you're avoiding doing, right? Go and do the thing that you actually want to do and allow it to be an obsession. Allow yourself to align your entire life towards it, right? Because if these are your real goals, that is what you should be doing. You should be aligning your entire life towards achieving them. Think about it. You scroll because you have nothing to do. But there is something deeply important to you that you may or may not be working on, but if you are working on it, not as much as you could, right? Humans need a goal or a project, something to obsess over, to work towards, to think about throughout the day, and to come up with ideas for it, to work through the problems on, to put their effort towards and a process of change and transformation, right? We need this, we crave this as human beings, right? So take some time and figure out what that thing is for you, then go all in. Think about it like this. Everybody is either spending their entire day doing pointless work or pointless pleasure. So therefore, it is absolutely not the wrong life path to have a day filled with purposeful work, a day filled with work that is meaningful to us, achieving something that is meaningful to us. Because if we're not working, we're giving into pointless pleasure. And if we're not working on the goal, the thing, we're just doing pointless work as well to drain ourselves to the point we need pointless pleasure. But if we remove both of those, we're left with one thing, and that is working towards our actual goals and our actual desires. So that is all I have for this video. I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned something valuable. I hope you took something from it. And if you did, go ahead and leave a like on the video. And if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. For any of you guys who are serious on your self-improvement and you want to take it to the next level, go ahead and send me a DM and request early access to the Academy of Self-Mastery. I'll get you sorted from there. We will get you access to the courses that are coming out soon, and we will get you into the program as soon as it is live, as soon as it is built out and created. But aside from that, that is all I have for you guys, and I'm out of here. Peace.